I am delighted about the group of artists that will be assembling in Oklahoma City for this performance of the St. John Passion by Taktus. We have a wonderful core of musicians that live here in Oklahoma, but we've got musicians coming from across the country to be a part of this performance, from Texas, from Arkansas, from Colorado. We have this fantastic tenor coming from New York. His name is Dan Coquell, and he specializes in singing the role of the evangelist, which is the lead singer, the lead tenor in this piece, who sings much of the gospel text that Bach writes for the St. John Passion. It's very demanding singing, fairly high, very expressive, and he does such a beautiful job. It just elevates the entire performance. I'm so happy to be working with him. But he's not the only one. We've got such a wonderful group of musicians. Nick Garza is a countertenor who comes up from Texas, and we don't hear countertenors in Oklahoma City very often. These are men who sing in their head voice, in their falsetto, up in the alto register. And Nick has such a beautiful instrument and sings with such expressive feeling. It's a very clear sound, and it's exactly the kind of voice that Bach was writing for 300 years ago. So we're so delighted to be welcoming him. We have a wonderful choir of singers, this fantastic orchestra. Some of the instruments that Bach calls for are not your typical orchestra instruments. Of course, we have violins and violas and cellos and double bass and flutes and oboes, and those musicians who are playing those instruments are fantastic. But there are two rather old-fashioned instruments that Bach calls for that we're delighted to have in this work as well. Carrie Morrow plays the lute and the theorbo. These are plucked string instruments like a guitar, but different. The lute has a kind of a rounder body, and it has this wonderfully sweet sound. And there's a specific aria in the piece that Bach wrote, this obbligato part, a solo part for the lute. And then for the rest of the piece, Carrie's going to be playing the theorbo, it's like a guitar with a very long neck, 5 feet long, with these really long strings, and it has this wonderful, rich sound. And he'll be playing that almost throughout the piece as one of what we call the continuo instruments, this group of low instruments that form the foundation of the harmonies in Bach's work. And those low strings and the ability to play several notes at once fill out those harmonies. And then finally, this beautiful instrument, the viola da gamba, which is an Italian word, but it means really the viola of the legs, because it's held between the legs like a cello, but it has more strings than a cello, and it has frets, and that allows the player to play with a different sound, and it's more plaintive and darker. And again, Bach calls in one specific aria for this instrument to play a solo role, and it's such an expressive instrument. It's just the right sound, and we're so delighted to have such great musicians that we can bring all of these wonderful colors and bring this wonderful music to life.